Last summer, I decided to book an Airbnb for a solo retreat in a secluded cabin deep in the woods. I craved solitude and a break from the hustle and bustle of city life, and this cabin seemed like the perfect escape. The listing boasted about the cabin's rustic charm, surrounded by pristine nature, and the promise of a serene getaway. Little did I know that my stay would turn into a chilling and inexplicable experience. Upon arriving at the cabin, I was captivated by its remote location. It was nestled among towering trees, surrounded by dense woods that seemed to stretch on forever. The cabin itself had a quaint, cozy charm, with a crackling fireplace, vintage furnishings, and large windows that offered panoramic views of the forest. As the sun set and darkness enveloped the woods, I started feeling uneasy. The forest seemed to close in around me, and the silence was eerie. I dismissed it as my overactive imagination and tried to immerse myself in the solitude I had sought. However, as the night progressed, strange things started happening. I heard footsteps outside my cabin, crunching leaves and snapping twigs, but every time I peeked out the window, there was no one in sight. I brushed it off as woodland animals or the wind playing tricks on me, but my unease grew. One night, I woke up to a tapping sound on the window. When I pulled back the curtains, I saw nothing but darkness. The tapping continued, getting louder and more persistent. I grabbed a flashlight and ventured outside, but there was no one around. I was perplexed and scared, but I couldn't find any logical explanation for the strange occurrences. Things took a sinister turn when I discovered a hidden room in the cabin that was not listed in the Airbnb description. The room was small and windowless, with peculiar symbols etched on the walls and an eerie aura that sent shivers down my spine. I couldn't shake off the feeling that I was being watched, and the cabin's rustic charm suddenly felt ominous. As my stay progressed, my unease turned into fear. I heard whispers echoing through the cabin, and sometimes, I felt like I was being followed in the woods. I would find items in the cabin misplaced, and strange markings appeared on the walls overnight. I tried to contact the Airbnb host for an explanation, but their responses were vague and unhelpful. One night, I decided to venture into the woods to investigate further. Armed with my flashlight, I followed a trail that led deeper into the forest, and the air grew colder as I delved deeper into the darkness. Suddenly, my flashlight flickered and died, leaving me in complete darkness. I stumbled my way back to the cabin, my heart pounding in my chest. As I packed my bags to leave the cabin, I couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched. I felt a sense of relief as I finally drove away from the cabin and the woods, but the mystery remained unresolved. I couldn't explain the strange occurrences, and the hidden room in the cabin left me with more questions than answers. Months later, I researched the history of the cabin and discovered a chilling revelation. The cabin was rumored to have been a site of occult practices decades ago, and locals believed that it was cursed. The symbols in the hidden room were associated with ancient rituals, adding to the mystery and unease that I had experienced during my stay. To this day, I cannot explain the strange occurrences at the cabin in the woods. It left me with a lingering sense of unease and a belief that there are mysteries in the world that cannot be easily explained. As an avid traveler, I had always been a big fan of Airbnb. So when my wife and I inherited a beautiful countryside cottage from my late grandmother, we knew exactly what we wanted to do with it. We decided to list it on Airbnb and turn it into a vacation rental. At first, everything went smoothly. We were excited to welcome guests from all over the world and share our little piece of paradise with them. The bookings started pouring in, and we were thrilled to see our calendar filling up. But soon, we started experiencing strange occurrences. It all started with little things, like misplaced items and furniture being moved around. At first, we brushed it off, assuming that it was just us being forgetful or our cleaning crew not being careful. However, as time went on, the incidents became more frequent and bizarre. One day, we received a complaint from a guest about strange noises coming from the attic in the middle of the night. We were puzzled as we hadn't rented out the attic and had kept it locked. When we went to investigate, the door was ajar, and we found footprints leading up to it. We were certain that no one had entered the attic, and it sent shivers down our spines. Another time, we received a frantic call from a guest who claimed to have seen a shadowy figure lurking in the garden late at night. We rushed over to the cottage but found no signs of anyone. We started feeling uneasy and paranoid, constantly checking the security cameras and searching the property for any signs of intruders. As the incidents continued, our once thriving Airbnb business started to suffer. Guests were leaving bad reviews, and our bookings started to decline. We were desperate to find answers and put an end to the mysterious occurrences. One day, I decided to dig deeper into the history of the cottage. I visited the local library and uncovered some chilling information. It turned out that our cottage had a dark past. Decades ago, it was owned by a wealthy family who had a son named Samuel. Samuel was known for his eccentric behavior and had a reputation for being reclusive. Legend had it that he died under mysterious circumstances and that his spirit haunted the cottage. Armed with this information, I started to piece things together. It seemed like someone was trying to sabotage our Airbnb business by posing as guests and scaring off other potential visitors. But why? And who could it be? Determined to put an end to the mystery, my wife and I decided to stay at the cottage ourselves and catch the culprit in action. We installed additional security measures and waited anxiously for the next incident. One night, as we lay in bed, we heard footsteps downstairs. We quietly made our way down, only to find the front door wide open. We quickly closed and locked it, but there was no sign of anyone. We checked the security footage and saw a blurry figure in a hoodie leaving the property just moments before we arrived. With the help of the local authorities, we launched a thorough investigation. It turned out that the culprit was the son of the previous owners of the cottage, Samuel's estranged brother, who was trying to scare us away and claimed the property for himself. We confronted him, and he admitted to all the incidents. He was arrested and charged with trespassing and vandalism. We were relieved to finally put an end to the mystery and restore the peace at our beloved cottage. As a travel enthusiast, I've stayed in countless Airbnb over the years. But one experience stands out as the creepiest and most unsettling encounter I've ever had. It was during a solo trip to a remote mountain cabin in the heart of the Appalachian wilderness. The listing boasted stunning views, serene surroundings, and a cozy cabin that seemed perfect for a much-needed retreat. The host, a middle-aged woman named Helen, had excellent reviews, and the photos of the cabin were picturesque, so I didn't hesitate to book my stay. Arriving at the cabin was a journey in itself. The narrow winding roads led me deeper into the dense forest, with no signs of civilization in sight. After what felt like an eternity, I finally reached the secluded cabin, which was perched on the edge of a cliff, overlooking a valley below. The scenery was breathtaking, but a strange sense of foreboding started creeping up on me. As I entered the cabin, I noticed a peculiar smell, a mixture of mildew and something metallic, which made me uneasy. The interior was dimly lit, and the furnishings looked old and worn, as if frozen in time. Helen had left a note on the kitchen counter, welcoming me and apologizing for not being there to greet me in person. She mentioned that she lived nearby and was available if I needed anything. I tried to shrug off my discomfort and settled in for the night. That first night was restless. I kept hearing creaks and thumps, as if someone was moving around the cabin. At one point, I even thought I heard faint whispers. But every time I investigated, there was no one there. I reassured myself that it was just my imagination playing tricks on me, and I tried to convince myself that it was just the sounds of the old cabin settling. The next day, I decided to explore the surrounding area. The scenery was indeed breathtaking, with miles of untouched wilderness to hike through. However, the sense of unease never left me. I couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched, and the silence of the forest seemed unnerving. When I returned to the cabin in the late afternoon, I noticed something peculiar. The front door was slightly ajar, even though I distinctly remembered locking it before I left. My heart skipped a beat, and I cautiously entered the cabin, searching for any signs of intruders. But everything seemed to be in place, and there were no signs of forced entry. That night, things took a turn for the worse. As I lay in bed, I heard footsteps outside the cabin. They were slow and deliberate, as if someone was deliberately trying to be stealthy. My heart raced as I grabbed a flashlight and went outside to investigate, but there was no one there. I called out, but the only response was the eerie echo of my own voice in the vast wilderness. I decided to cut my trip short and leave the next morning. But when I woke up, I realized that my phone was missing. I searched the cabin frantically, but it was nowhere to be found. Panicked, I made my way to Helen's house, hoping to borrow her phone and report the incident to the police. When I arrived at Helen's house, I was met with a shocking sight. The windows were shattered, and the door was wide open. I rushed inside, fearing the worst. The house was in disarray, as if there had been a violent struggle. But Helen was nowhere to be found. I dialed emergency services on her landline and waited anxiously for help to arrive. As I sat in the living room, I couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched. The walls seemed to have eyes, and the air felt heavy with an otherworldly presence. I couldn't help but wonder if whatever had happened to Helen was somehow connected to the strange occurrences at the cabin. When the police arrived, they searched the house and the surrounding area thoroughly. They found no sign of Helen, and my missing phone was nowhere to be found either. The police took my statement and assured me that they would investigate further, but I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was deeply wrong. I decided to leave the area immediately and return home. I packed my bags in a hurry, constantly looking over my shoulder as if expecting someone to jump out at me at any moment. As I left Helen's house and made my way to my car, I heard rustling in the nearby bushes. I shone my flashlight in that direction, but there was nothing there. My heart was pounding in my chest as I got into my car and drove away as fast as I could. The drive back was filled with a sense of relief and fear, all at once. I couldn't wait to get as far away from that place as possible, but I couldn't shake off the feeling of being followed. It felt like there were eyes on me, even as I drove alone on the desolate mountain roads. When I finally arrived home, I couldn't shake off the lingering unease. I constantly checked my surroundings, expecting to see something out of the ordinary. I couldn't sleep properly for days, haunted by the inexplicable events of my trip. Several weeks later, I received a call from the police. They informed me that Helen's body had been found deep in the woods, not far from the cabin. She had been brutally murdered, and the investigation was ongoing. I was shocked and horrified, my worst fears confirmed. To this day, I still can't explain what happened during my stay at that Airbnb. The strange smells, the eerie sounds, the missing phone, and the unsettling feeling of being watched all remain unexplained. I can't help but wonder if Helen's murder was somehow connected to the cabin, and if the presence I felt was something otherworldly. I'm grateful that I made it out of there safely, but the memories of that trip still send shivers down my spine. It's a story that I can never forget, and a cautionary tale that reminds me to be wary of the unknown, even in the most picturesque of settings. Thanks for watching. We hoped you enjoyed these Airbnb chilling stories. Please be sure to give the video a like and leave a comment on your thoughts of the story. Also, let us know what kind of story you would like to hear next, or if you have a story you would like to share. We would love to hear from you, so please leave us a comment or email us.